Hi, how are you?
I'm okay.
Good. You found the office okay and everything?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, Caitlin, can you tell me just a little bit in your own words what brought you in here today?
So I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, just stage 1, and I got a lumpectomy. I went through chemo and radiation over the past year. And back when I got diagnosed, they wanted me to come get this genetic testing, but there was just so much going on that I couldn't add another thing on my plate. And so I figured, now I'm past the treatment part, and that feels really good. And so I just figured now is a better time for me to come in.
Yeah, great. That's wonderful. How have you been feeling with everything?
I'm glad to have the treatment over, but it's been a difficult year.
Of course, yeah.
And I just, hoping that it stays away, and
of course.
Thinking about the testing, it's been a little bit scary. So
yeah, it can definitely be something stressful, but that's actually good that you realized it was important for you to wait a little while, because it can be hard to process a lot of information on top of a diagnosis as well. And I see you have a daughter, correct? Julia. Yep. And she's 5 years old? Yeah, so I'm sure it was probably a lot going on with being a mom, then getting cancer, then thinking about possibility of even testing as well.
Yeah.
That can definitely be a lot for someone. So, can you tell me what you know sort of about hereditary breast and ovarian cancer?
Not a lot. They told me that because I was younger when I got diagnosed, and because there's some people in my family who've also had cancer, that it may be more likely that I have something, but I don't know what that means. Is there a possibility that I could pass something on to Julia? That's terrifying.
Right, yeah, I'm sure it is.
That's really all I know about it.
Okay, sure, yeah, so we can definitely talk about that a little more. I just wanted to ask if there were any questions you had up front that you wanted me to answer right away.
Not really. I'm just curious about the risk for my daughter.
Okay.
Okay,
sure. So if it's okay with you, I think what could be helpful today is for us to just review a little bit of the family history information that you gave me. Thank you for that. We can talk a little bit about hereditary breast and ovarian cancer. And then if you're comfortable with it, we can explore some testing options and see if that's something that would be a good fit for you.
So it's just an option. I don't have to do testing if I
That's correct. Yep, some people decide to, some people don't, and either way, it's perfectly fine. Everyone's unique, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. There are many different options for testing if you do decide to do that.
Okay. I was a little nervous this would be like a sales pitch. So
no, not at all. Yes, it's a very unique decision. You have to feel comfortable with it, and we can certainly go through all the options. I just want to make sure that you're making an informed decision, whatever that may be. Okay, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, just to recap then, you were diagnosed a year ago when you were 37, correct? And then I noticed on your father's side of the family, you have an aunt and an uncle who both had cancer?
Yeah.
Right, your aunt with breast cancer and then your uncle with prostate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like for you?
I wasn't super close
Okay.
with that side of the family. That's why this kind of came as such a shock, because I don't feel like it doesn't feel like to me like I have this big family history. But I was young when my aunt was diagnosed, and I remember her going through treatment. And she made it out. She survived that diagnosis, and I know it's brought up. We do the walk, and she's a survivor.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really around for a lot of her treatment. They didn't really want me to be present for a lot of that.
Sure. Yeah.
And my uncle had prostate cancer, but he's more living with prostate cancer, not as much. Doesn't seem to affect his life that much.
Sure. So, just to recap a little bit about hereditary breast and ovarian cancer, you said you've heard a little bit of information about it, but not too much.
Yeah, they've mentioned like BRCA, but I don't really know what.
Right, yeah. So the BRCA gene mutation is one of the more common genetic mutations that we see with these hereditary breast cancers. So that's often the one that's brought up most often. Sometimes people call it the Angelina Jolie gene because they see things like that in the news. But basically, it is an inherited genetic mutation that would give an individual a much higher risk of developing cancer. So it's never a 100% risk. If you inherit this, you are going to get this condition. But it is a very increased risk for both breast and ovarian cancers, mainly, as well as some other cancers as well.
So because I had cancer young, does that mean I have this gene?
It does not. So sometimes the reason you were referred here is because we can see little red flags in a family history sometimes. That might indicate it's more likely that there could be one of these genetic changes or mutations running in a family. But it's, of course, we would never know for sure one way or the other whether you did get the testing, right? So some of the things we do look for when we are considering if an individual would be an appropriate candidate for genetic counseling is multiple diagnoses of a similar type of cancer. For example, breast cancer in the family, and then certain cancers such as breast and ovarian, which tend to run together, which ovarian isn't present in your family. And then also young age of diagnosis, like you mentioned, is another sort of red flag that we sometimes look for if we're determining if someone could benefit from genetic counseling. And that's because individuals who are positive for genetic mutations such as the BRCA1 or 2 mutations do tend to develop cancers at younger ages than we would expect to see, like 60s, 70s in the general population. They might develop cancer 30s, 40s, 50s. Did you have any other questions about hereditary breast cancer specifically?
Not really. I mean, I guess just what it means if I do have something, what could that mean for Julia?
Sure, yeah. So, as you may know, if a parent has a mutation in, for example, the BRCA gene, there is a 50% chance of someone passing that on to a child. It is, yes. So, for example, let's say you did have that mutation, that would mean that one of your parents would have had it. And just from looking at the pedigree, we might think that it would be coming from your father's side because that's the side that we're seeing more of those cancers on. But again, we wouldn't know for sure unless you did decide to pursue testing.
So would Julia need to get testing now?
So I don't want to jump ahead too much.
Okay.
Right now I want to talk about how you feel about the testing. And I know it can kind of be scary. Of course, we want to think about our children. We want to protect them. And sometimes parents do feel guilty even though we can't control the genes that we pass on to our children.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in theory, yes, if you were positive, then Julia would have a 50% chance of inheriting that. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What are you kind of thinking about right now?
I don't know. I mean, it's just a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I do feel guilty if I have something and I didn't know and I pass it on to her, and I was considering having more children, and now, I mean, even with this diagnosis, I don't know if that's possible, but the fact that I might have something that I can pass on to another child is scary.
Of course, yeah. I mean, certainly a lot of parents feel that way, and it is a scary situation. We want to protect our children at all costs. So let's talk a little bit about the possibility of testing then. And you said initially you didn't seem like you were super eager to jump right into it.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you know about the testing? If you ever have known anyone who's had genetic testing before?
I don't know anyone who's had genetic testing. I mean, I know I had some testing done before I had Julia, but I don't think that's the same type of testing. I think it was like a carrier test or something like that.
Okay.
But I don't know anyone who's had testing for this type of stuff before.
Okay, so then just to give you a little frame of reference for this, it's a bit similar to the carrier test in that we're looking at your genes. It is a simple blood test, and it would be seeing if you have the mutation in one of these cancer disposition genes or not. Okay, and then we can go into more options on different tests to look into if that is something that you feel like you're leaning towards. But I just want to make sure that that is something you'd be comfortable with before we jump into more detail on that. So I often have patients who come in and, they're a little confused about testing, or they're just not really sure one way or the other, kind of what way they want to go. And something that I think could be helpful is thinking about what is motivating you in this situation. What are the reasons why you would consider testing and the reasons why you wouldn't?
I mean, I think I would consider testing because, like you said, there's risks for other types of cancers, and so I want to know if I'm at risk to get another cancer or for this breast cancer to come back because, I want to be around for my daughter.
Of course, yeah.
And if she's at risk, I want her to know that too. But then part of me is also feeling really guilty that I could have passed something on to her, and I don't know if I can handle that guilt or that information. But I don't know. I mean, do most patients get testing? Like, what would you do?
So it's a little bit difficult for me to say because I've never been in this exact situation. I've never been in your shoes. And every patient is unique. That's ironically, that's kind of the single defining factor amongst every patient. They're all unique. And they really have to make a decision that will fit into their own life and help achieve what they want to achieve. That being said, I can say that there are patients who decide to not test. There are patients who decide, testing might be an option for me, but not yet. Certainly this isn't your only opportunity to get this done.
So I don't have to make this decision today.
No, you do not. No. In fact, sometimes I even recommend, sleep on it. I can give you plenty of information to take home. Is there someone who you tend to discuss things with, a partner, a family member?
I mean, I used to talk about this with my husband, but we recently separated, and so it's made it this past year just like another challenge.
Right.
And my mom and my brother know about, my diagnosis, and they were really helpful through it, but I just feel like I've been putting a lot on them, and so I haven't been as forthcoming. They don't know that I'm here today.
Oh, really? Have you shared with anyone that you came here today?
No.
Why is that?
I think it's a few reasons. I feel like I've put a lot on them with the diagnosis and the treatment, and they were very supportive. But I just feel like this might be too much for them. And also, like we discussed, this has implications for my other family members too,
right.
And so, I don't want my mom to feel guilty like I do for Julia if she gave something to me. And I know that this could impact my brother too, and so, I don't know quite how to approach it with them when it's not just about me anymore, it's about them too.
Right, yeah, it's definitely a lot to consider, and when you are the first person in the family to come for genetic testing or genetic counseling, sometimes people feel like, oh my gosh, it's all on me. I'm going to have to be the one to disseminate information that may be stressful to other people or impactful. A lot of patients do raise that issue. And one thing I will say there is that there are always strategies that we can work on if it did ever come to that. Helping to explain genetic information, things that we talk about to other family members. There are always strategies that we use. Sometimes we even compose letters to the family So it doesn't have to be all on you, all the responsibility to sit down and explain everything. You know, like you have enough on your plate. You shouldn't have to be the one to explain it to every single person in your family. But yeah, that can be really difficult.
Yeah, because I want them to know, and but I just don't know how to do it without adding extra burden onto them.
That's right. Yeah, I can understand that, because it's definitely a stressful thing, wondering if you have, some type of genetic change or not that might predispose you or other members of the family to illness. But there are definitely strategies that we can use to help individuals kind of disseminate this information in probably the least stressful way possible. So if it did come to that, there are certainly things that we can work on in that regard. Have you thought about who you would want to give this information to if you did decide to pursue testing?
I probably talked to my mom first. She's been really helpful through everything and helping me take care of Julia while I was going through my diagnosis. And my brother. I mean, I may talk to my husband, but we're not on the best terms right now. Okay. So it's been really difficult, and I just don't know if this is something to bring up right now.
Yeah. And certainly, even if you did go through with testing, you wouldn't have to immediately disseminate the results to everyone or anyone at all, right? It's a very personal thing, and it's something that you would need to sit with first and make sure that you're comfortable with before sharing it with other people.
Would my family, like, if I get tested and if I have something, would they need to get tested too, or would they just, would they have it?
So they could certainly consider testing. It doesn't automatically mean that everyone else in your family has it. So if you think about it, if an individual has a genetic mutation such as this, there's a 50% chance of them passing it down. So, for example, if we said that you have some genetic change, that would mean that you inherited it from mom or dad, right? Either one. And then your brother would also have approximately 50% chance of inheriting it. Okay? So then it certainly would be appropriate for him to consider testing. And then others in your family as well. So that would be an option for them, but they wouldn't automatically be forced to pursue it, right? They'd be invited to come speak with me or another genetic counselor to discuss, just like you, if this is something that they feel comfortable pursuing and when they would want to pursue it. Okay? Okay. So something else I like to do with my patients is kind of a pro and con list when they are considering whether to actually pursue testing or not. So can you tell me some of the reasons that are making you shy away from testing?
I think it feels like a lot still. Getting through this treatment has been a big hurdle for me.
Right.
This past year has been really hard, and I feel more ready now than I did before. But I think just it's overwhelming, and it's a lot of information, and the risks feel very high. And knowing that I could have passed something on to Julia is it's a big challenge for me.
Right, yeah. That's definitely understandable. Something I do want to ask is how well you sit with uncertainty. I know it sounds like a funny question, but when you think about it right now, you're kind of in that uncertain stage, do I have something, do I not? And then with testing, you would know definitively one way or the other. Now, some people say, you know what, I am perfectly fine with not knowing. I'm okay with that because if I did find out I was positive, it would just be way too much stress, too much information, I couldn't handle that. And then some people are the complete opposite. They say, I can't stand not knowing, it's just the anxiety is killing me, I need to know one way or the other no matter what. Do you feel like you're gravitating towards one side or the other?
Maybe more towards the uncertainty now is difficult.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once I made it through all the treatment, I thought, oh, I'm done. And then I came back to this thought of, oh, I need testing to see if I am at risk for cancer again. And not knowing if I'm at risk is difficult.
Okay.
I don't like that uncertainty, but I also don't know how I would react if I came back positive, if I would just constantly be on edge. Like, when is my next cancer going to pop up?
Right. So that is an important consideration. Something that I will say is that for a lot of these hereditary breast cancer genetic mutations, there are very well-established screening and management guidelines. And that is something that helps some patients, not all, but some, feel a little bit more secure. Like, okay, I'm positive, but I have a plan now. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to get screening. In the future, maybe some prophylactic surgery. So there are a lot of options that are for management and screening that we can discuss later on if that's something you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely helps knowing that there's something I can do about it if it comes back positive. Because I feel like right now, and especially during my treatment, I just felt kind of helpless. I didn't know what I did to cause the cancer, what I could do to help, and then now I don't know what exactly to do.
Okay.
So that's definitely a pro, I guess, is it might give me some. I'd be able to be proactive about it.
Right. Yeah. Are you someone who likes having, a lot of information to be, to be able to be proactive?
Yeah. Yeah, especially, I want to be around for my daughter as long as possible, so anything I can do to make that happen, I want to do. So that's
okay.
It's a motivator for testing, but also what con is that, if I pass something onto her, this is something she's going to have to worry about too.
Right, yeah. So, and then certainly if that situation were to come about, then when Julia is older, she might be having a similar conversation with me or someone else at that point about testing possible screening. But again, she's only 5 years old, I see, so that wouldn't be something that she would need to worry about right now. Okay? Right now, I want to make sure that testing is something that sits well with you, first of all. And there are certainly several different options for testing. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And we can go into more details about the different types of tests if you would like. Okay, great. So I can discuss with you some of the different options for testing and then some of the different potential results that we can get, and then some of those management and screening guidelines like I mentioned earlier. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah.
Okay, great.